Frustrated. I'm a doctor. I work here. I'm literally wearing my hospital ID.
Buddy, at this point I don't care. You are coming with me.
Is it because I'm black? That's why you don't care to even check my badge?
Maybe. Go ahead and slowly turn around and put your hands behind your back.
So you're arresting a doctor in his own workplace without confirming anything?
If you keep talking, I'll add resistance to you.
Officer Rebecca Stanton had 6 years with the Seattle Police Department, but only 3 of those years on active patrol duty. She was known for what colleagues called hypervigilance in hospital settings, particularly responding to calls involving theft or impersonation. One Wednesday evening at Harborview Medical Center, her inability to see past racial bias would cost the city $2.4 million and destroy her career in law enforcement. A black man in his late 30s, Dr. Andre Bennett, was simply walking through the hospital corridor toward the emergency department where he worked. He was wearing navy blue scrubs, a white coat with his name embroidered on it, and his hospital identification badge clipped visibly to his chest. No crime, no emergency, no suspicious behavior. Just a doctor heading to his shift. But Officer Stanton saw him and made an instant judgment rooted in prejudice. She believed a black man in medical attire must be impersonating a doctor. That false assumption triggered a confrontation that would include a physical detention in front of patients and staff, a humiliating perp walk through the hospital, and a federal lawsuit that would expose how racial bias operates even in professional settings with clear identification. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, please hit that subscribe button. Stories like these need to be shared, and your support helps us bring more truth to light. Harborview Medical Center, a major medical center in the heart of the city, where hundreds of staff members move through corridors 24 hours a day, where white coats and scrubs are the uniform, where identification badges are mandatory and visible. It was 6:45 on a Wednesday evening. The shift change was underway. The hallways were busy, with nurses, doctors, technicians, and support staff moving between departments. Dr. Andre Bennett had been an attending emergency medicine physician at Harborview Medical Center for 9 years. 9 years treating everything from cardiac arrests to trauma cases. He'd supervised residents. He'd published research on emergency protocols. He'd been nominated twice for the hospital's Excellence in Patient Care Award. His colleagues trusted him. His patients praised him. His supervisors considered him one of their most reliable physicians. But that evening, he wasn't thinking about accolades or recognition. He was thinking about the backlog of patients waiting in the ER, the 2 critical cases that had come in during the afternoon, and whether he'd have time to grab coffee before the night got too hectic. Andre had parked in the staff garage, walked through the Skybridge connector, and was making his way down the main corridor toward the emergency department. He wore his standard work attire, navy scrubs, white coat, stethoscope around his neck, his hospital ID badge clipped prominently to his chest, showing his photo, name, and department clearly. Emergency medicine, attending physician. He nodded at nurses he recognized. He waved at a resident he'd mentored. He was exactly where he belonged, doing exactly what he did every shift. But to Officer Rebecca Stanton, none of that registered. Rebecca Stanton had joined the Seattle Police Department 6 years earlier after working 3 years as a private security guard. Her academy instructors noted her eagerness, but also her tendency to escalate minor situations. She'd spent her first 3 years with the department in community liaison roles and administrative assignments, work that kept her away from street patrol while supervisors evaluated her judgment. When she finally moved to patrol, her performance reviews were mixed. She was diligent, thorough, but also quick to assume the worst. In 3 years on patrol, Stanton had generated 7 complaints. 5 of them involved people of color stopped or detained in professional settings where they clearly belonged. A black attorney detained at the courthouse accused of trying to sneak into a restricted area despite wearing a bar association badge. A Latino chef questioned at his own restaurant after a customer assumed he was a delivery person. An Asian doctor stopped in a hospital parking garage and asked to prove he had authorization to park there. A black businesswoman detained at an office building accused of trespassing despite having a key card and company ID. Every complaint had been reviewed. Every complaint had been closed with familiar language. Officer acted within discretion. Insufficient evidence of bias. Recommend additional training on cultural competency. Stanton attended the trainings. She checked the boxes. She sat through the workshops, and then she continued seeing criminality in professional spaces, continued questioning credentials that should have been sufficient, continued assuming that people of color in positions of authority must be lying. That Wednesday evening, Stanton was assigned to a hospital patrol detail. Seattle General had been experiencing issues with theft, unauthorized individuals in restricted areas, and occasional disturbances in the emergency department. The hospital had contracted with the police department for additional presence during evening shifts. Stanton had been walking through the main corridor when a nurse, a young white woman named Brittany Matthews, mentioned to her that she'd seen someone she didn't recognize near the medication storage area earlier. Did they have ID? Stanton asked. I think so, Brittany said, but I wasn't sure. He looked like he might be new. What did he look like? Black guy, scrubs? I don't know, maybe I'm being paranoid. Better safe than sorry, Stanton said. I'll keep an eye out. And there it was, the seed planted, the suspicion activated. When Stanton saw Andre walking down the corridor moments later, her mind filled in the rest. Black man, scrubs, might be impersonating staff, could be stealing medication, need to investigate. Never mind that Andre's ID was visible. Never mind that he was clearly comfortable in the space, greeting staff, moving with the confidence of someone who belonged. Never mind that dozens of other staff members were walking the same corridors in similar attire without being questioned. Stanton saw what she'd been conditioned to see, a black man who needed to be verified. She walked quickly to catch up with him. Do you think hospitals need specific protocols to prevent staff from being racially profiled by security? Drop your answer below. Andre was almost to the emergency department entrance when he heard footsteps behind him and a voice calling out, "Sir, excuse me, sir." He turned, assuming someone needed medical help. He saw the police officer and his mind immediately shifted to professional mode. "What's the emergency?" he asked. Stanton approached, her hand resting near her duty belt. "I need to see some identification." Andre's eyebrows rose slightly. He'd been through versions of this before, usually in parking lots or elevators, but never in the hospital corridor during a shift. He gestured to his chest where his badge was prominently displayed. "My hospital ID is right here," he said. "Dr. Andre Bennett, emergency medicine." Stanton barely glanced at it. "I need to see a driver's license or state ID." Andre felt the familiar weight of frustration. "Can I ask what this is about? I'm heading to my shift. We've had reports of unauthorized individuals in the hospital. I need to verify who you are." Andre's patience was wearing thin. He pulled out his wallet slowly, extracted his driver's license and medical license, and held them out. "Here, driver's license, medical license, hospital ID badge. All with my name and photo. Now can I go do my job?" Stanton took them, examined them with clear skepticism, then looked back at him. These could be fake. Andre stared at her in disbelief. "Fake? You think someone created fake medical licenses and hospital IDs just to walk around in scrubs? People impersonate medical staff all the time. Not with 3 forms of identification, they don't." Andre gestured around the hallway. "Ask anyone here. Ask the nurses. Ask security. I've worked here for 9 years." Stanton's expression didn't change. "That doesn't matter. You're coming with me to verify this." Andre's voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through. "I'm a doctor. I work here. I'm literally wearing my hospital ID." Stanton's tone turned cold, dismissive. "Buddy, at this point, I don't care. You are coming with me." The words hung in the air. At this point, I don't care. Not about the identification, not about the badge, not about the verification she claimed to need. She'd already decided. Andre looked directly at her, his voice steady but pointed. "Is it because I'm black that's why you don't care to even check my badge?" Stanton's face shifted slightly. Not with shame, not with reconsideration, with something closer to confirmation. Her voice was cold when she responded. "Maybe go ahead and slowly turn around and put your hands behind your back." Andre looked around. Other staff members were walking past, some glancing over curiously. He recognized a few colleagues, saw their confused expressions. The situation was attracting attention now. Several nurses had stopped at their station, watching. The corridor was filling with witnesses. A resident Andre had mentored a young woman named Dr. Lauren Hayes approached quickly, her voice alarmed. "Dr. Bennett, what's happening?" Stanton pulled out her handcuffs, her movements deliberate. "Ma'am, step back. This doesn't concern you. He's an attending physician," Dr. Hayes said firmly, her voice rising with disbelief. "I work with him. You can't just handcuff him without cause." Stanton's jaw tightened. "Ma'am, I need you to step away." Dr. Hayes didn't move. "This is insane. He's wearing his hospital ID. His name is on his coat. What are you doing?" Deshaun Mitchell, the security supervisor, an older black man who'd worked at the hospital for 15 years, walked over quickly. "Officer, that's Dr. Bennett. He's been working here since before I started. What's the problem?" Stanton was surrounded now by people vouching for Andre, her assumption crumbling under the weight of evidence she'd refused to accept from the start. But instead of backing down, instead of apologizing, she completed what she'd started. "Turn around. she repeated, her voice harder now. The corridor went silent. Nurses stopped mid-stride. Other doctors paused their conversations. Everyone watched as Officer Rebecca Stanton approached Dr. Andre Bennett with handcuffs. Andre looked at the faces around him, his colleagues, his staff, people he worked with every day, now watching him be treated like a criminal based on nothing but Officer Stanton's admission. She'd said maybe it was because he was black, and she was handcuffing him anyway. He thought about his patients in the emergency department, wondering where their doctor was. He thought about the medical students who looked up to him, now seeing him humiliated. He thought about his parents who'd pushed him through medical school, who'd celebrated when he got this position. And he thought about every time he'd had to prove he belonged, every time his credentials weren't enough, every time his skin color erased his achievements. "I'm complying under protest," Andre said clearly, his voice carrying down the corridor. "I am Dr. Andre Bennett, attending physician, emergency medicine. This is my workplace. This officer just admitted race is a factor in my detention, and everyone here is a witness." He turned around slowly. The handcuffs clicked shut. A nurse started crying. Dr. Hayes pulled out her phone and started recording. Deshaun Mitchell, the security supervisor, immediately radioed for the hospital administrator on duty. Stanton walked Andre down the corridor toward the security office, one hand on his arm, his hands cuffed behind his back. They passed patients in the waiting area, they passed visitors, they passed staff members who stopped and stared in shock. "Dr. Webb," a patient called out, an elderly man Andre had treated the week before. "What's happening?" Andre couldn't answer. His throat was too tight with rage and humiliation. By the time they reached the security office, the hospital administrator, Patricia Morales, was already there, her face pale with fury. She took one look at Andre in handcuffs and turned on Stanton. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" "That's Dr. Webb, one of our attending physicians," Stanton stammered. "I was verifying his identity. There was a report of unauthorized individuals." "A report? From whom? And even if there was, he's wearing hospital ID. His colleagues vouched for him. On what grounds did you handcuff him?" "He was uncooperative. I was protecting my dignity," Andre said quietly. "I was refusing to be humiliated for doing my job." Morales pointed at Stanton. "Take those handcuffs off right now." Stanton hesitated, then unlocked the cuffs. Andre rubbed his wrists, his jaw clenched. "Dr. Webb," Morales said, her voice shaking slightly, "I am so deeply sorry. This should never have happened. We will be filing a formal complaint with the police department immediately." Andre nodded but didn't speak. He was trying to process the violation, the anger, the sheer absurdity of being arrested for being black in his own hospital. A police supervisor arrived within minutes, Lieutenant Vincent DeLuca, who'd worked with the hospital for years and knew the staff. He listened to Morales' account, watched the video Dr. Hayes had recorded, and spoke briefly with the witnesses still gathered in the corridor. Then he turned to Stanton, his face stone cold. "You detained a physician in his workplace while he was wearing full identification, with multiple witnesses confirming his identity." Stanton's voice was small. "I was investigating a report." "What report?" "Show me the incident number. Show me the dispatch record." "There was no formal report," Stanton admitted. "A nurse mentioned seeing someone she didn't recognize." DeLuca closed his eyes briefly, visibly struggling with his anger. "You arrested a doctor because a nurse mentioned seeing someone she didn't recognize. Not someone stealing, not someone threatening, someone she didn't recognize. Do you understand what you've done?" Stanton didn't answer. DeLuca turned to Andre. "Dr. Webb, you have my sincere apology. This was completely unacceptable. You'll have access to all reports, video footage, and body camera recordings. And I can tell you right now, Officer Stanton will not be working in this hospital or any other again." He turned back to Stanton. "Give me your badge and weapon. You're done for the night." Stanton handed them over, her hands trembling. Should officers face immediate suspension after detaining any professional in their workplace without cause? Let me know what you think. By the next morning, the story had spread through the entire hospital. By noon, it had reached the local news. By evening, it was national. Video from Dr. Hayes' phone showed the entire encounter. Andre being questioned despite clear identification. Colleagues vouching for him, Stanton handcuffing him anyway. The perp walked through the hospital corridor. Black doctor handcuffed at his own hospital, physician detained while heading to ER shift, Seattle cop arrests doctor despite hospital ID and witness confirmation. The Seattle Police Department issued an immediate statement condemning the detention. The hospital issued a public apology. The medical community erupted with outrage. Doctors across the country shared their own stories of being profiled in professional settings, of having their credentials questioned, of being assumed to be janitors, orderlies, or security guards rather than physicians. Civil rights attorneys contacted Andre within hours. This wasn't just about an unlawful detention. This was about the persistent assumption that Black professionals, no matter their credentials, must prove their legitimacy in ways white professionals never have to. The lawsuit named Officer Rebecca Stanton, Lieutenant DeLuca, and the Seattle Police Department. The allegations were clear and damning. Unlawful detention without reasonable suspicion, racial profiling in a professional setting, violation of civil rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress, false imprisonment, failure to train officers on implicit bias in professional environments. The city's attorneys reviewed the case and knew immediately this was indefensible. Body camera footage and civilian video showed everything. Stanton questioning Andre despite visible ID, colleagues confirming his identity, Stanton handcuffing him anyway, the walk through the hospital in handcuffs while patients and staff watched. The city settled within 7 months, $2.4 million. Andre donated a portion to organizations fighting for equity in healthcare and police accountability. Officer Rebecca Stanton was terminated 9 weeks after the incident. The termination letter was direct. Officer Stanton engaged in racial profiling and unlawful detention of a medical professional in his workplace. Despite clear identification and multiple witness confirmations, she handcuffed and detained Dr. Webb without justification. Her actions violated department policy, state law, and federal civil rights protections. Her employment is terminated immediately. Stanton's name went into the National Decertification Index. Her law enforcement career ended permanently. She attempted to appeal, but the union withdrew support once the medical community submitted formal complaints and the video evidence became public. Stanton issued a brief statement. "I made a serious error in judgment. I failed to properly assess the situation and caused harm to Dr. Webb and the hospital community. I take full responsibility." No one cared. The Seattle Police Department faced intense scrutiny. How had Stanton, with 7 prior complaints involving racial profiling of professionals, remained on patrol? Why had supervisors ignored the pattern? What training existed to prevent officers from questioning clearly identified professionals? Internal Affairs launched a comprehensive review. What they found was predictable. Complaints filed but minimized. Training completed but ineffective. Supervisors who didn't want to address uncomfortable truths about implicit bias. Officers who attended diversity workshops and then returned to patrol with the same assumptions intact. Reforms were announced. Mandatory implicit bias training focused specifically on professional settings. Real-time review of all detentions in hospitals, schools, and corporate environments. A dedicated oversight unit for discrimination complaints. Community advisory boards with enforcement power. Dr. Andre Bennett didn't want to be an advocate, but the moment demanded it. He testified at city council hearings. He spoke at medical conferences. He gave interviews about the intersection of healthcare, race, and policing. His message was consistent. I went to medical school. I completed residency. I've been practicing emergency medicine for 9 years. I've saved lives. I've taught students. I've earned every credential on my badge, and none of it protected me from being handcuffed in my own hospital because an officer couldn't believe a Black man could be a doctor. He paused during one particularly difficult interview, his voice thick with emotion. My patients saw me in handcuffs. My students saw me treated like a criminal. My colleagues had to watch me be humiliated. And all of it happened because Officer Stanton's assumptions about who could and couldn't be a doctor were stronger than the evidence right in front of her eyes. The interviewer had no response. This wasn't just a bad detention. This was a stark illustration of how racial bias operates even when credentials are clear, even when identification is visible, even when multiple witnesses confirm identity. Officer Rebecca Stanton didn't see a doctor. She saw a Black man in a professional space and assumed he must be lying, must be impersonating, must be criminal. She couldn't imagine that a Black man could be an attending physician. She couldn't imagine that his presence in a white coat was legitimate. She couldn't imagine that her mental image of what a doctor looks like might be shaped by racism rather than reality. Her bias was so embedded that she ignored hospital ID, dismissed colleague confirmation, and handcuffed a physician in front of patients, all because her assumptions were more powerful than facts. Systemic racism in policing extends into every space, including hospitals where credentials should be unquestionable. It's the assumption that Black professionals must be questioned, It's the refusal to accept achievement when it doesn't match stereotypes. It's the weaponization of police authority to enforce who belongs in positions of respect and who doesn't. Rebecca Stanton's career is over. That's justice. The city paid $2.4 million. That's accountability. But money and terminations don't undo the trauma. They don't erase the memory of being handcuffed at work. They don't restore the respect that was violated in front of colleagues and patients. The real question is, what changes now? Do departments finally understand that racial profiling happens in boardrooms and hospitals, not just on streets? Do they finally train officers to recognize that credentials are credentials regardless of who holds them? Do they finally accept that questioning clearly identified professionals isn't vigilance, it's discrimination? Because if we don't fix the system that put Rebecca Stanton in a hospital with 7 complaints and no accountability, if we don't address the bias that taught her to see impersonation instead of achievement, then we're just waiting for the next officer, the next victim, the next doctor who has to prove he belongs in his own workplace. Comment if this should be mandatory. Any detention of a credentialed professional in their workplace triggers automatic review and suspension pending investigation. And if you believe these stories matter, if you think professionals of color deserve to work without being treated as suspects, then hit that subscribe button, because we're going to keep exposing these patterns. We're going to keep demanding change. We're going to keep fighting for people who've earned their positions and shouldn't have to prove it to biased officers. This isn't just about one officer or one doctor. It's about all of us and the assumptions we're willing to challenge or the biases we're willing to enforce.